Running a new aircraft in DCS can be overwhelming. With so many switches, mods, and procedures, it's easy to feel lost. In this video, I'll talk about how I personally approach learning a new DCS module, both for fun and for making content on my channel. It's not the only way and may not be the best way, but it works for me. I'll be using DCS as the example here, but honestly, what I'm going to talk about can apply to other flight sims as well. Whenever I pick up a new aircraft, I usually start by reading the manual, cover to cover, at least once or twice. Why? Because it's the best source of information, researched and written by experts on the subject. Or maybe I'm just old school. Some people ask me, do I really need to read the whole manual? And the answer is no, not all at once. I like to do a first pass just to get a general idea of how the aircraft is structured, where the controls are, what the main systems do, and how things are supposed to flow in a mission. Then I revisit specific sections later, like weapons or radar, when I'm ready to dive deeper. Yeah, I hear you. Reading a manual can be boring and dry, but honestly, it's still the most reliable reference out there. When Falcon 4.0 came out, I think I read the manual at least 3 or 4 times, just to wrap my head around it. I really wish Chuck's guide had existed back then. Then, I jump into the official training missions included with the module. I also check out any useful guides and articles I can find online. That's usually enough to get me flying. But if something doesn't make sense, I'll revisit the manual or training missions, or look up tutorials on YouTube, until things start to click. Sometimes I repeat the same training mission several times. Eventually, it just clicks, and the systems or flight model begin to feel natural. One tip I found helpful is to take notes while going through the training missions. It sounds nerdy, I know, but writing down key steps like startup sequences or weapon mods make it easier to recall later. Sometimes I even record myself doing the mission, just to rewatch and catch things I missed. For single player missions, I usually run each 1 to 3 times, more if I'm recording footage for a video. That familiarity makes editing a lot easier later on. But let's be honest, some aircraft are just hard. The F4E Phantom, for example, is a beast. I've put hundreds of hours into it, and I still feel like a beginner. And honestly, that's how it should be. Real pilots train for years. There's a reason for that. Of course, that doesn't mean you have to spend years learning a module in DCS. It just takes a bit more time to learn compared to other games. I remember struggling with the Hornet. As much as I wanted to catch that 3-wire, I just couldn't. No matter how hard I tried, I always ended up catching the 4 or the first wire. Then I went back to the manual, Chuck's guide, and watched a couple of YouTube videos, and only then did I realize that my aiming point on the carrier deck was totally wrong. Even though it's a straightforward process, I didn't pay close attention to that section in the manual. That's the thing about complex modules. Sometimes it's not about being bad at flying, it's just about missing one tiny but critical detail. Especially when you're dealing with a manual that's hundreds of pages long. And learning to troubleshoot that's part of the fun. Everyone learns differently. So if your method looks different from mine, that's perfectly fine. What matters is finding what works for you. And one thing I've learned over time, don't force it. I mean, don't be too hard on yourself if something doesn't work out. Some modules just don't click right away. If you have seen my videos about the struggles I had, and still have, with helicopters, you know what I mean. You might be excited about an aircraft at first, but after a few frustrating sessions, it's totally fine to put it down and come back later. I came back to helicopters after a few years, and magically it just clicked. Now I'm having a blast with them. That also happened to me with the MiG-21. I love the idea of flying a Cold War Red 4 jet, but the workload burned me out fast. Too many switches, to be honest. I was overwhelmed. A few months later, I came back with fresh eyes, and suddenly it was fun again. So if you are struggling, take a break. The module will still be there when you're ready. When I made the A10C video, the whole process, writing, recording, editing took about a week and a half. That was fast, mainly because I've been flying the Hawk for years. I'm pretty proficient with it and extremely familiar with the airframe. But for something like the Mirage F1 or the F4 Phantom, it took me nearly a month. I've owned them since launch but didn't get serious about flying them until recently. The amount of time it takes to create content on a particular module really depends on how familiar you already are with the aircraft and how deep you want to go. On the content creation side, things get trickier when I have to record while flying. Sometimes I'll pause mid-mission to get a clean camera angle or refly the same sortie just to capture a moment I missed. And voiceovers are a whole different beast. Being a non-native English speaker, I have to practice and record quite a lot. And what you're hearing right now is the result of 5 takes. I know I still don't sound that great, but trust me, I'm trying my best. And I promise I'll keep working to improve my narration. As for the script, I start with the loose draft, then refine it after flying the missions so I can explain what's actually happening without sounding like I'm reading off a checklist. Then I repeat the whole process until I'm satisfied. But even then, it doesn't guarantee a successful video. As you probably know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's frustrating and stressful, but I'm trying to enjoy the process, just like learning a new DCS module. If you're starting fresh with a new module, I would recommend beginning with the manual or Chuck's guide. These are solid foundations that explain not just what to do, but why things work the way they do. There are excellent tutorials and informative videos on YouTube, and they can be really helpful, but I would avoid relying on them at the very beginning. At least for me, they don't always stick. They work best when used alongside reading material, not as a replacement. My general approach goes like this. I start by reading the manual or a guide to get a basic understanding of the aircraft. Then I watch a few relevant tutorial videos to see how things look in action. After that, I go through the training missions included with the module. If something still doesn't click, I go back to the manual or replay the missions until it does. Once I feel somewhat confident, I start flying a few single missions to apply what I have learned. Eventually, when I feel ready, I jump into a campaign or try multiplayer. Another great way to learn faster is by joining a virtual squadron. It's probably the quickest way to improve. You'll have real people to ask questions, fly with, and get feedback from. But even then, you still need to do your own homework. No one can do that part for you. If you're curious about virtual squadrons but feel intimidated, don't worry. They are often more welcoming than they seem. Some groups are very structured with scheduled training sessions, while others are super casual and relaxed. Either way, flying with others helps you to stay motivated and pick up small habits or techniques that you'd never find in any manual. After all, DCS is a study level sim, and that's what makes it so rewarding. Yes, it can be frustrating at times, but once you put in the work, read the manual, nail the procedures, flown your first missions, you get the feeling of real accomplishment. So that's how I learned a new aircraft module in DCS. It's a mix of reading, watching, practicing, and failing over and over until it all starts to make sense. If this video helped you out, or if you got your own tips for learning faster, feel free to share them in the comments. And if you're new to the channel, check out my other videos. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Every bit helps. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the skies.